Hi there, class. I just wanted to go over something I covered in class, which is creating custom objects in SketchUp. And here we are in a nice blank document, and I think I'm going to create a custom desk for our project. And one of the things that is kind of the basic features of SketchUp is when you draw an object, such as a rectangle, and I'm just going to start the rectangle here. And I like to start at the origin. That's when you're creating a component, that's a really convenient place to start, and also when you insert it into other drawings, it typically comes in grabbed by that origin point, usually. Anyway, when you draw an object in SketchUp, you see how it tells you your dimensions down on the lower right. Well, rectangles are funny in that there's two dimensions, a width and a height. And when I click to draw my rectangle, it tells me how big it was. But like with a lot of commands in SketchUp, you can change that number. And I'm just going to change this by typing, 8 feet, comma, say 30. And I don't even have to type in the little inches sign. Everything is in inches. When I hit enter, you see how it resizes the rectangle. And of course, if I want, I can change my mind to 6 feet, comma, 6 feet. Hit enter. I could even type 8 feet, comma, let's see, 30 inches. And then if I decide that I want it to be 12 feet and 30 inches, I can just type in 12 feet and comma and hit enter. 12 feet and comma, and it will change the size of the rectangle just that one dimension. Anyway, I think I like the 8 feet, 8 feet, comma, 30 inches the best. When you're drawing this object, I think I'm just going to get rid of this lady here. Now I can't change the dimension, right, without moving objects, of course, moving lines or something like that. I think I'm going to use my push-pull command. I just hit P to get it to activate. And again, as you can see, it types the dimensions in, and I can either click and drag until I get the dimension I like, or I can type in some number. I think I'll just type in 36. It seems to be a very nice height for a table. And of course, you're designing these tables, so it is good to keep in mind kind of how they'll be used and the human scale, how people fit into these things. Now, I want to draw an overhang on this counter. And I think a lot of people, we tend to think kind of the way we see the world, which is from above. But actually, a lot of commands are easier to activate or to apply to the undersides of objects. And of course, this is a 3D modeler. I can look at the 3D model from any direction I want. One command that's really handy is this offset command. And you can see I've displayed the names of the tools underneath the tools. I think that's probably a good idea for those of you who can't kind of remember what the buttons are that, based on what they look like. For me, at this stage, I do actually remember what the buttons look like, but I'll leave those on for the lecture. Anyway, what the offset command does is it takes a surface, and you see how it's recognized this surface here. I'll click, and then as I drag in, it will create a copy of whatever perimeter it finds, whatever kind of bounding surface. And again, like other commands, I could type in a number if I had an exact number that I wanted, or I could just go by drawing it by eye. Now I can push-pull that surface up, and of course I do sometimes have to rotate or orbit the model or zoom in order to get a good view of the countertop. But see, that looks pretty countertop-ish to me. I can even do this same technique to get a kick space underneath, and again I can type in a number if I have an exact amount that I want, and 3 inches in and 4 inches high is pretty typical for this sort of counter. And you can see that that actually starts to give me a pretty good base for a countertop. Now, there are a couple of other features of SketchUp. First of all, if I want to make the counter longer at this point, of course it does get a little tricky because there's no kind of way to just stretch it. AutoCAD has a stretch command. But because everything is sticky, let's say I want to just make this counter deeper. If I put myself in a view like this, which is highly foreshortened, I can use my selection window. Remember that selection window thing? This is a crossing window. Everything that it touches will get selected. This is a selection window. Only things that get are within entirely within this window will get selected. I can select the entire back of this countertop, and now all I have to do is hit move, and I can move it because everything in SketchUp is sticky. Now this can be good, but it can also be quite disturbing if you want to make your desk very warped. Now in this case, I'm going to take advantage of these green axis. You see how my cursor is giving me this green axis indicator? I'll take advantage of that and just go 6 inches in that green axis direction. That's a way you can kind of quickly stretch a table. One thing to be aware of, by the way, when you use the move command, and maybe I'll draw a separate box for that, you don't have to have anything selected. I'm going to activate the move command. See, I had nothing selected. Now, when I mouse over things, the cursor is smart enough to know that I wanted to select it and move it. I can select faces, lines, but you can even select points. See how I can grab this endpoint? And depending on the object, those endpoints can actually be moved up vertically to create some pretty interesting warped geometry. So it's an awful lot of fun sometimes. Now, of course, SketchUp will revolt if it's something that is entirely geometrically impossible. But you can see you can create some pretty unusual shapes quite quickly using this technique. Anyway, all right, back to our front desk. A couple other things that I wanted to do. Let's see. We'll go back to... let's try putting in some shelves, okay? Now, I did this in class, and I'll do this a little more simply this time. But the basic idea is that, of course, you can draw on any object, and because it's everything is sticky, I can break the face of that object to create like a big shelf for, oh, I don't know, hair care products or something. Now, I want a whole bunch of these shelves across the front. The general rule is if you have something that's a repeated object like this, I could just copy it, but it's much better to turn it into a component first. So I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to right-click on it, and from that context-sensitive menu, choose Make Component. And of course, you could give it something clever, like some name that's clever, like Shelf, or something like that. What you'll find is now when you copy, and of course, again, this is something we've already touched on, I'm going to use the Move Copy command, copy this puppy over, and then I'll use my modifier. Remember, we talked a little bit about modifiers, all these things that are sort of alterations to the command. And one that we have that's really nice is the array modifier. And all I have to do in this case is type in slash and some number, say 5. And I can make 5 copies that span in between the original and that first copy. Now I think I want more, so I'm going to type /7. Yeah, that looks a little nicer. Okay, so those modifiers are available in most commands that you click on. If you click on, oh, I don't know, the move command, for example, holding down the control key will get you different options. Even just in the select command, if I select objects and hold down shift, I can add or subtract from the selection set. If I hold down Alt on a Mac, it just subtracts from the selection set. So every command has these modifiers, and it will tell you down at the bottom what those basic modifiers are. Sometimes there are even more that are hidden. All right, so I've got my nice shelves in there. One other thing I want to do is maybe put in a little kick space here in the back, or not kick space, a space for a chair. The way I'm going to do that, I'm going to draw in a rectangle. And of course I could be very precise and try to measure the back here, but I'm just going to draw a rectangle that's pretty close. I'll pull it in. Oh, it gets stuck. What's going on? It gets stuck right at this base. And the reason is because SketchUp knows that you often want to align faces. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my pencil command, draw in some lines to kind of complete this rectangle. I'll erase the extra line so I can build up shapes using these smaller shapes. And now I can quite easily push-pull the rest of this space to get somewhere that a person could sit. Okay? Now, last but not least, we should probably paint this guy. And most of us probably, hopefully, have experimented with the paint bucket. And of course, there's any number of different things we could use, materials and that sort of thing. The one big thing to remember about the paint bucket is that as you paint objects, if the object is a component, if I paint that component, you see how only that one is painted? If I want to paint inside the component so that they all change, I need to double click on it using my select command. And now when I paint inside, I can paint each surface individually. Probably should paint the top too. And here, we'll paint the back some lovely green or something so that it's recognizable. Okay, so now when I see this model, I can quite easily recognize the different pieces. Now, the last thing I think I might want to do here is I think I'd like to add an edge onto this countertop. It looks really bad to have a very pointy, sharp edge like that. It looks very unrealistic. Most of the times, you're going to see some kind of nosing on the countertop. Now, in this case, I'm just going to make it a nice rounded nose, which they call a bull nose. And I'll do that by drawing an arc. Now, the thing about arcs is, and this is true for most commands, if you look, there's a red line indicating I'm on the red axis. You have to be very careful with arcs because they can go in any axis, just depending on which way your cursor is going. If I go this direction, I get a green indicator from my cursor. It's making an assumption that I want to go in, or an inference that I want to go in that direction. Make sure you click when it's going in the direction that will draw the arc in the correct way. So now I have this nice profile for my countertop. I'm going to use the follow me command. Just click here on my large tool set, click on the profile, and then on a Mac, all I have to do is hold down the command key. On a PC, it's the Alt key, and move my mouse over the surface that I want the profile to wrap around, and like magic, whoops, I moved my cursor one time too many. Click on the profile and then move, holding command down, it will make it wrap around the entire counter. Okay, now this counter is nice and smooth, this counter edge, so it does make it quite easy to paint. Just be aware that if there are a lot of hidden lines in your project, and you might see this in some of the models that you download off of the internet, those hidden lines, well, first of all, you can hide them if they are visible. Sometimes they come in and you'll see all these funny dashed lines. To do that, you just go to the View pull-down menu and choose Hidden Geometry. Finally, the option here for objects that have those hidden lines or have those dashed lines but are not hidden is you can use either the eraser command, and when you erase over a line, but hold down the Shift key. And down here, if you look, there's an option for holding down the Shift key, which will hide that line. If you just don't want to see a line, for whatever reason, you can hide whole lines. Just be careful, because if you hide certain things, they disappear entirely. But edge lines are usually ones that you can make disappear. And that gives it kind of a smoother look. Okay, let me hit undo, because I don't want to hide those windows. So anyway, even the erase command has the ability to do a number of modified options. Anyway, all right, so that is the last of these basic commands that I wanted to show. The one big thing to know about when you produce custom objects, it's often a good idea to start in a blank document. Now, on a Mac, I can have multiple windows open at the same time. On a PC, it's a little bit less convenient. You'll have to start a new drawing. So there's a greater temptation to create the drawing inside your model. Otherwise, if I just save this onto my computer, I can insert it into my other drawing. If I just go to the Window pull-down menu, go here. Oh, it's already there. Look at that. And I go to the File pull-down menu and choose Import. I can import that model that I just created. All right, well, I'm not going to do that, though. What I am going to do, show you one more set of commands, and this is really when you get into some really advanced stuff that SketchUp can do. The next thing I want to show you is something called the Extension Warehouse. And if you go to the Window pull-down menu, you can choose Extension Warehouse. You can also click on the button here. In fact, there's 3D Warehouses, the Model Components Library. Extension Warehouse is kind of the functionality warehouse, I guess, or browser that you have. And as I mentioned in class, there are a number of different types of things that you can do with SketchUp by extending its basic functionality, sort of like the same way that a cell phone, a smartphone, is kind of a basic platform. When you start adding apps, that's when it really starts to cook. So anyway, the one that I want to show you today is 1001-bit tools, and I'll just type in 1001-bit. Tools, and search for that, or you can just probably type in 1001 and it will find it. And I'll let you guys, you'll all have to log in either using Google or some other account. And you can download this software for your SketchUp. And what it is, it's basically like an app. Now mine is already in here, so I don't have to turn it on. But I do have to go to the tool palettes and activate that tool palette. On the PC, I believe it may actually just come in automatically, but on a Mac, I have to activate it. And what you'll see is a really long toolbar. In fact, there is a way that you can customize the 1001 toolbar by going here and managing the toolbars, and you can kind of turn off a whole bunch of them. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as is. Now, this does a lot of really cool things, most of which we're probably not going to get to this semester. But if you do SketchUp a lot, you'll find that a lot of these are really handy. My favorite happens to be this wall tool. I'll just click on the wall tool. And what I like about it, first of all, is it kind of diagrammatically shows you what it's going to be doing. And even the kind of order that you click things, it often explains that to you. So in this case, the wall thickness, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. The wall height, and again, you can type in here and change these numbers. Whoops, if you try. And typically it builds the wall as a group, which is to say, as opposed to a component, it builds it as a group, which is easy to edit. And to build the wall, you just start clicking. And what you'll see is that this tool will build a special wall that is a group with two surfaces. And I'm just going to go back to this original starting point, and it will actually close the entire surface. It's a group that's easy to activate. If I just double click on it, these are individual surfaces, so I could, in theory, push-pull them if I wanted to. Or I could paint them either individually or as a group. But the other thing is some of these other commands, other tools will work on this system of walls. So for example, let's say I wanted I don't know, a 5 foot wide, 4 foot tall opening. I can just type in those dimensions here, and here it explains the points that you click, the order that you click to create the opening. And I'll just click Create Opening, start here, click once to place the distance, and one more time, and it will actually chop a hole through that opening. And in fact, if you do have interior openings already, you can, or interior walls already, you can use this same tool. And then once you've done it, you can further modify it depending on whatever your design interests are. So this add-on tool is something that's extremely helpful for interior design. The other one that I've demonstrated here is the Stair Tool. And what's nice about the Stair Tool, again, it allows you to fill in a lot of information. So I'm going to build this stair, aim it in a certain direction. But then once the stair is actually built, it's just a SketchUp model. I can paint it. I can even do things like scale it in case I didn't do my calculations properly. You just have to be aware that if you scale it too far, you're going to ruin your floor-to-floor, or I'm sorry, your riser heights that you may have set up very carefully. So be aware that you can affect things that are not good to mess around with. Other tools on here that I happen to like, there's some here that do some very interesting things. For example, there's actually a door opening tool. This tool here is a panel divider, which is kind of funky. It basically creates window frames on a wall. Whoa, except selected the wrong wall. It created a window frame on the floor. It creates a window frame on this object. The other one is this louver tool, which I think I said in class, I don't really know why I like that tool so much. But I really get a kick out of it. Oops, I forgot to, oh, there we go. Oh, I put them on the floor again. I keep doing that. All right, well, anyway, there's my louvers. It can be a louvered floor, apparently. Anyway, these are all objects which, once they are in SketchUp, you can select them and move them around and modify them. In fact, you can even warp them using scale and that sort of thing. The more you add, of course, the more difficult it will be to model, because your computer will get slower and slower. But with these basic tools, one, how to create custom components, and then two, using these extensions to build functionality into SketchUp, there really should be very little that you could come up with that you would need to model that you wouldn't know how to, using some combination of these tools. And again, sometimes it may be a matter of drawing something by hand that you think is really neat, and then trying to find the tools that are going to get you where you want to go.